And so I was, how would you say it, a child. I'm less than 10, I'm rather certain. And we go to the beach once a year. So whenever you go to the beach, we got all the cabanas, the tents, the umbrellas. Really, my family has gone through a transition period while we've been going to the beach. I think we used to be tent people. Bring a tent, set it up. I think a tent,
like a camping tent.
I don't know if it's no. Sorry. A 4-pole tent,
like a canopy.
Canopy, yes, a canopy tent, like you would at a tailgate, almost.
Right.
But I'm rather certain those didn't really hold up that well against hurricanes, force winds. But I do know we've had the tent, we've done umbrellas, and then we've done the Cabana Boys umbrellas, where they set it up for you. And that is by far the best. Shout out Aunt Patty for always securing that. But we've really gone through it all. Well, whenever we were younger, we would always bring a cart out, and it was one of those beach carts where you hold all your belongings. And the kids had the great pleasure of pushing that cart in the sand, and it was a lot. I don't know if 9-year-olds are supposed to be strong enough to do that, but it was a workout for myself, I'll be honest with you. But there was one time, and I don't know the day, but let's call it a Tuesday. The currents, the flag, there's 3 flags primarily: green, yellow, and red. At least on the Gulf of Mexico, Gulf of America side. Sorry, I don't know what it is like on the Atlantic side, other than very shelly and nasty.
Right.
But I believe this was at least a yellow flag. Well, we were in the water, and by we I mean myself, and the waves were crashing pretty hard, and I just remember fighting for my life, honestly. And I now that I say it, I think we've maybe hit on this a little bit. But there was a moment where I turned around and I looked at who was on the shore and who was running toward my rescue, and it was my mother. And I think one of those beautiful things is your mothers or fathers are willing to put themselves at harm's way to protect their children. Well, I was struggling, and this has happened more than once, to be honest. Not me almost drowning or anything, but you know how when you get in the water, you start to drift away, and then you have to come back to shore, walk all the way up. So we kind of figured out the plan is we'll drift a little bit, we'll walk up to shore, we'll actually walk past where we're staying, go back out, so we can drift toward where we're staying. It's really quite beautiful.
1,000 IQ play.
Yes. But there was one constant there, and that was my mother. Now, you may be listening to this, listener, and you may be, what about your father? Father's great, no doubt about it. But 2 things. It's not Father's Day, and 2, that he works still when we're at the beach. So he was not there. But I say all that because I think it's just something to think about, something to remember about. No matter the storms of life, no matter the current of life, I think good quality parents provide a safe place to drift away and come back to, metaphorically and physically speaking. So I also want to say Happy Mother's Day to all of the mothers out there, or aspiring mothers.
Yeah, Mother's Day is always, it always kind of sneaks up on you, But we can't forget about all the things moms have done for us. You could probably hear in the background, Callan is upstairs. She's crying. She's screaming right now. I don't know if you could hear that or not, but
We cannot,
okay, that's good.
but we believe you.
She has an ear infection, first of her life, which obviously, we've gone through this with Stetson maybe a dozen times. So
What is up with the Walters in the ears?
it's me, man. I'm pretty sure it's me. And me and my brother both had tubes because we had a bunch of ear infections, growing up. Um, and I think it's really kind of symbolic because we look at Mother's Day and you look at what your own mother did for you, and you say, "Gosh, I grew up. I had a bunch of ear infections, and my mom took care of me, and she was sweet and she was gentle to me, and she took care of me whenever I was hurting." And then you look at your own child and you look at your wife, who's also a mother. You say, "Dadgum, my kids have ear infections as well." And here their mother is doing the exact same thing. So really, it's a beautiful picture. You got generations and generations of mothers taking care of babies with ear infections, getting up in the middle of the night. I mean, I tried to get up. Molly, she kicked me 2 nights ago. She said, "Get up and go get Callan." I picked Callan up. She starts screaming twice as loud. I said, "I'm sorry, you got to come in here. You got to do something about this." So in the middle of the night, Callan, she doesn't like whenever I get her. And honestly, I don't want her to scream, but it's not the worst thing. Molly's like, he doesn't know what he's doing, whatever. Let me go grab her. So I wish I could be more of a help, but she just screams so loud whenever I pick her up in the middle of the night. So I just end up going right back to sleep, honestly.
He's probably thinking, this chest is rather hairy for what I'm wanting.
Right. No milk, lots of hair. Not what I'm looking for. But no, yeah, it's Mother's Day is great. We look at all the moms, generations above us, all the things they've done. They're strong, strong people. Birthing people, we call them strong.
And it's all in the hips, Some people are made for it. And that would be mothers. Now, I'm curious what you think about the origins of Mother's Day. But before we tackle that, I want to go back to even the touch factor between mother and child. Obviously, as your example, Callan, she knows the feel of her mother because the mother, I'm not saying your touch is not tender and care, but the mother is the supplier of nourishment and ultimate reliance on the mother because we're so dependent. Not we. Well, I'm getting to my metaphor here, but children, a baby is so dependent on their mother for nourishment, for the milk. And I think when we grow up, we become more and more independent for our nourishment physically, which then leads to us often wanting to become more independent for our nourishment spiritually, which is wrong because the downfall of reliance on God is man's desire to be self-sustaining, or woman's desire to be self-sustaining, woman's or man's desire to be independent. Well, whenever we rely on ourselves to accomplish things, we then do not rely on the Lord. And so I think there's something beautiful to be said about the motherhood, the physical milk of motherhood for a child relating to the spiritual milk for the child of God, which is, I believe, a 1 Peter reference, though I'm not certain, so please don't quote me on that. But I was just curious if you thought that made sense, or if I'm just talking out of my rear.
It kind of made sense. I lost you a little bit there. Whenever you were talking about that, I was thinking about this scenario where there was a situation where Molly was talking to another mother, and the mother was like, "Oh, so cool, you have a baby. I also have a baby, but the baby she had was like a year and a half old, so could walk, presumably could talk a little bit." And she goes, "Yeah, it's kind of stressful sometimes dual feeding." And Molly was like, "What do you mean by dual feeding?" And she's like, "Well, this baby, this 1.5-year-old baby, has an older brother who's 3.5. And sometimes it can be a little stressful when they're both hungry at the same time." This is real life, dude. I'm not even making this up. And I'm sorry to divulge or divert from what you were talking about, but it just popped in my mind. And she was like, "Oh, okay. That's great. More power to you." On the inside, she's like, wow, really?" So yeah, 3.5-year-old and a 1.5-year-old both just getting that quote unquote nourishment. It's tough. It's tough. I think when the kid walks up and says, "Hey mom, I just graduated from college. I'm a little hungry. Can you hit me with a little snack?" And instead of throwing some dang cheddar bunnies at him, she just whips that thing out. So it's wild to me, but there's people that do
Right.
it and they love it,
Right.
and they think that, and I'm sure it keeps them close to their child. But there is a point in life where you've got to say, "Look, it's time for you to spread your wings a little bit." And as a 3.5-year-old, I think spreading your wings maybe looks like eating chicken, or
Yes.
something like that.
How do you assess? How do you think? I get it's a case by case, right? There's no gold standard, um, but whenever let's take Stetson for example, he's 2, no longer breastfeeding. Was that a doctor call? Was that a, "Hey Stetson, it's time to wean you off of the natural milk"? Um, how do you make that decision? What are the factors involved? What are your thoughts? What was your experience?
I think it's all up to the mom. Truthfully, I think Molly was, not to get into the details too much, but
This is the Quite Frankly podcast,
okay, quite frankly,
but don't
her
overshare about someone else.
right. Of course, of course, of course. It was getting to the point where Molly was like, maybe we should try to wean a little bit. There's different methods of weaning. There's baby-led weaning. There's, I think, mother-led weaning, which is, I believe, what we did. She said, "Look, when you're a year old, you can have cow's milk. So what we're going to do is half your bottles are going to be breast milk now, and half of them are going to be cow's milk. And then you slowly go from 50-50 to 75-25 until eventually they're just drinking cow's milk." And look, cow's milk is delicious. You give them the good stuff whole, Fairlife milk. I mean, it's ultra filtered.
Oh, it's so good.
And I honestly, every night I get a glass. It's so good.
So that's a good answer. Have you ever tried? Would you ever try father-led weaning?
What do you mean? Like, you need to stop breastfeeding?
Honey, it's time. It's time. He's 3.5 years old. It's time.
Well, I think at that point, there's going to have to be some sort of father-led intervention there. But look,
it
to
might
each
be
his
an
own.
economical decision at the same time. Milk isn't cheap, especially if you go get the whole organic kind. It's a lot cheaper to use what you naturally produce because you're naturally producing it another way.
Yeah, it's true. I think about babies myself. I was formula fed growing up. I guess I didn't like breast milk, whatever it was. I don't know, but they say breast is best. But if the baby doesn't want it, then you're kind of out of luck. So I was raised on formula, and that junk is not cheap. We had to supplement with Stetson a little bit. And of course, we got the whole grain,
Of course.
vegan, non-GMO, you know, cage-free formula. And it was not cheap. So eventually I was like, all right, can we go to like real milk? Because this formula is so dang expensive. So yeah, you're right. It may be an economical decision. The dad's like, this is great. I haven't had to pay for food for this 3-year-old. This is phenomenal.
Yeah. Well, speaking of expensive, I saw that the government is incentivizing childbirth by giving out stimuli checks for people who give stimuli is plural for stimulus, I believe,
Okay.
for having babies. Now, naturally, that would be using the taxpayers' money. And I was just curious, as I know you are a fan of less tax, right? You enjoy a little less federal involvement in your taxes. What your thoughts are upon this incentivization?
No, I appreciate the question. I think it's interesting, man. I think it's a shame that we as a country have gotten to the place where I think the birth rate is like 1.1 or something like that, which obviously isn't a replacement rate. So we're seeing a population decline, and I think a lot of it is cultural. You see people who are in their late 30s who, aren't really looking to have kids or putting it off, put it off until they're like in their early 40s. And this is taking people out that are, that deal with infertility and things like that. But there's just so many people who are hyper focused on career, maybe themselves too a little bit, to where they don't even really consider having kids until it's late 30s, early 40s. And then at that point, it's like, is it too late? Like, should we even, I don't know if you're watching Summer House at all right now, but Kyle and Amanda are kind of going through the same thing right here. They're like, look, we waited so long to have a kid. We were so focused on our careers. And then Amanda's like, is it too late? Why even try at this point? So that caused a little bit of consternation amongst them. But I think it's strictly cultural, and it's a shame. I don't think it's a terrible idea to try to incentivize families to have more kids. I just wish that it was ingrained in our society. Because, back in the 50s, I keep going back. I say the 50s were great. I wasn't around in the 50s, so I don't know for sure. But, I mean, people were having like 10 kids. It's like, this is great. I mean, look at all these kids, I don't think I want to have 10, but I'm going to, Lord willing, have more than 2.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the proverbial head. Is the non-kids, it can be, we get so focused on career success, and honestly, then you get distracted. And I wouldn't even call it a bad distraction, but I think Amanda and Kyle's a good example, other than that they don't have what would seem like they don't have a relationship with the Lord, but I don't know their hearts, right? But the evidence of the fruit is lacking. But they both really wanted children. That was something they talked about before marriage. Kyle still wants children. Amanda says she'd be fine. I think that was just she was just speaking in the moment, speaking out her mind, which is quite beautiful. That she doesn't have a controlled tongue around her husband. She just lets it all out. But I do think it's not people start to make decisions based on the economy, right? I can't have 3 children because I can't afford 3 children. Well, the more children people have, the better the economy is. That the more demand there is, the lower the prices. But whenever you start population decline, you decrease demand. Your supply hasn't decreased, so prices go up. And so I like it, but I do agree it doesn't address the root issue. And if you're a believer in Jesus, children are disciples. It's a primary disciple making strategy. And I think it's a beautiful thing. And I'd encourage children. I love it. I love it. And if you got to pay my tax dollars to incentivize that, whilst I one day hope to see a nation and a world where life can flourish without incentivization, monetary of childbirth, you may have children because you want children, not because you want money, then may God be praised.
Yeah, for sure. No, in terms of what we're spending our tax dollars on, I think I would certainly prefer to give stimulus to couples that are having babies. Don't look at me like that. Stimulus checks, let's call them that. I'd rather give money to couples that are having babies, and not just because I'm in that stage of life where, we're having children, but I think that would be a more useful allotment of our tax dollars rather than, things like USAID and other miscellaneous items like that. Not to get too in the weeds.
Yeah,
but
so give to Caesar's what is Caesar's, right? I think there's something beautiful about paying taxes that is being honoring to God. Of course, you want what those tax dollars are doing to also honor God, but that's not necessarily what the Bible says in that passage. It says you live under the law of the land, not the Jewish law, the Old Testament law, but we've chosen to live in America. We could move anywhere if we wanted. That's the thing. If we really wanted to not live in the United States of America, we would not live in the United States of America. But we've chosen to live here. We know the deal. We know what's going on. We know that there's taxes. And anytime Caesar, proverbially, the government, of course, anytime that uses it for something that aligns with the scriptures, it's beautiful. At the same time, government is ordained by God. And so how much honor does God get when we are obedient to God's commands? Do we cheat on our taxes? That's sinful, no matter what you think. Because we're cheating an ordainment of God, a structure that God has ordained in the world. Well, just something to think about, my friends, listeners, quite frankly. I think it could be easy to not pay your full taxes, but there's something deeper, just like there's something deeper with producing children versus getting stimulus checks. There's something deeper than just being angry at the government at all times. God is using the government to make himself glorified. So may God be praised for that. We also have a responsibility to speak up if something doesn't align biblically with what God commands. Well, that was a good conversation. I'm kind of curious what your thoughts are. Do you think Mother's Day is a selfish holiday? Was it originated by a man or a woman? And were they single? Were they married? Did they have children? And then finally, what do you think makes Mother's Day so special for mothers?
So the first question was, who invented Mother's Day? Is that correct?
Yeah. Like, was it a mother that's saying, oh, I need a day that just celebrates me, so I'm going to create this day? Or was it a man who was like, Man, mothers are awesome. We need to celebrate them.
Do you know the answer to this? And
No.
oh, okay. I thought this was trivia time. Um, I have two answers. The first one is if I turn on my little conspiracy theory cap in my brain, I would say possibly the flower industry or the chocolate industry or perhaps the spa and salon industry. Wouldn't be surprised if they had a hand in the creation of Mother's Day. Oh, look, you should be appreciative for moms. You should send them flowers and chocolates and have them get a massage or something like that. That way, that way they can, stimulate our economy a little bit. That's certainly a possibility. I don't know if that's true or not. I would say in reality, I think it was probably, I wouldn't be surprised if it was a church or some sort of religious institution, and not any religious institutions, probably some sort of either Christian, yeah. I don't know. There's probably a pastor, a priest somewhere along the way that created it. Just because I think the appreciation of mothers, and we talked about this before, but the appreciation and love for mothers, I feel like it ties directly to the gospel and what the church believes. So I really would not be surprised at all if it stems from some sort of Christian / Catholic origination.
Right. Yeah, I think you're on the right track there. I could easily search it on Google, but I think it's better to leave it a mystery and take, quite frankly, for gospel. So my follow-up question is, what do you think in general a mother is thinking, oh, it's Mother's Day. I'm a mother. This is my perfect day. What does that look like? Put yourself in those shoes. Size 6, size 7.5 women's, maybe Veja, Veja,
Vejas,
the
yes.
brand. They're very mother-like shoes. I'm going to get myself a pair, in fact. Living in, let's just say they're living, let's go Nebraska.
Nebraska?
Living in Nebraska.
How old?
They are 33. They have 4 children.
Dang, let's go.
Their husband is 36, though. So there was a 3-year gap. They got married at 19. She was 19. Let me be clear. She was 19. He was 22.
And the kids are ages ranging from probably 5 to 10, maybe, or 11.
No, actually. They had 3 at the very beginning. Whenever she turned 21, she had her first. 3 was her second. 26 was her third. And then they've tried for the past few years. As you get older, you start to have some fertility issues, statistically speaking. And then at around 32, they had their 4th. So this 4th one is he's coming up on a year old. And he's the only boy in the family. So 3 girls, 1 boy.
Which means he's probably a little rambunctious. He's probably a little crazy, running around the house. I'll say this, and this was going to be my answer.
He's 10 months old, so I don't know how much running he can do. But
they can move. They can still move. Crawling is honestly just as bad as running. They're so fast. Here's what I'll say. I think a perfect Mother's Day, I'm obviously not a mother, so my idea of a perfect Father's Day is going to be a little different. But perfect Mother's Day.
I would hope
so. Well, honestly, I would think some sort of breakfast in the morning, perhaps made by her husband and with the help of some of the children. That's a nice, sweet touch. Hey, you kids, go grab a knife and cut up the strawberries and I'll make the French toast or something like that. Little breakfast at the house, breakfast in bed, maybe. I've always found breakfast in bed to be, no one's ever made me breakfast in bed, FYI. I'm just putting that out there on the airwaves, but it doesn't seem like it would be comfy or conducive for a good breakfast. Even if it's delicious, you're like sliding down. You got to readjust the pillows in the back. I just think it'd be better sitting at a table. But I think after breakfast, maybe, she goes to like a day spa or something like that. Gets a massage, get, maybe a mani-pedi, a haircut, maybe with some of her friends. And they're all, maybe they've got a little bubbly or something like that. Leave the kids behind with the dad. Just forget about all your worries, everything that troubles you from day to day. And then maybe that afternoon or that night, maybe go out to dinner or something like that, either with the family or with her friends. You could let her make that decision. But I'm essentially just describing like the past 2 Mother's Days that we've done for Molly, just because it's not easy. It's kind of easy, but I feel like a mom just wants to, as much as they love their kids, and it's kind of funny for Mother's Day. It's like, oh, you're a mother, so you have kids, but as your Mother's Day treat, we're going to get you away from the kids, which is, I think, a great idea.
Mm.
So, but yeah, that's what we're doing for Molly. I mean, I might make a little breakfast here this morning. I might not, but she's got some of her friends are leaving at 9 to go to Sarasota. Me and the boys got a little day spa hooked up for them over there. So
it's interesting. You didn't say anything about going to church on Mother's Day. Very, very strange.
Well, I wasn't thinking the actual day. I was thinking your actual,
we're talking the actual day.
Oh, well,
we're talking the actual day.
Then that totally changes everything.
It's not Mother's weekend, right? They get one day.
It is around here. It is around here. I think on an actual Mother's Day, I mean, get up, go to church, get a nice lunch after, and then that's it.
Yeah. Honey, your day is Sunday. Today I'm golfing. Okay.
Well, that's not the case at all. Me and 3 of my friends, it's the classic golf group. We're sending all the ladies to a day spa today. So Mother's Day is really today. And I think we're all going to meet up at a park, and there's going to be 4 guys and there's going to be 7 kids.
Let's go.
If that's not a good replacement rate, I don't know what is. So
yeah, that's beautiful. You shared something that was quite interesting. You said, isn't it funny that on Mother's Day, their ideal day involves getting away from the children? And I think there's something beautiful that happens as time goes on, is Mother's Day for mothers, because I think that is true to a certain extent. You're literally around them at all times. It's nice to get a break. But then as time goes on, Mother's Day, mothers want to be with their kids, right? I think whenever you go off to school or you get older, a mother wants to be with her children on Mother's Day. There's something that changes, and it could be separation, right? Separation tends to lend an ear to desire. And so I think that's the circle of motherhood at the end of the day, is Mother's Day. Whenever you got 4 children who are under 11, man, I need a break. Mother's Day when you got 4 children over 18, man, I want to be with my kids.
That's probably fair. I feel like the older you get, the more it's like, especially if they've gone off to college or something like that, you want to be with your kids, maybe have a nice dinner, something like that. But I think that's a very intellectual take that you just gave us. So I appreciate that.
Well, yeah, it wasn't me who gave it. It was by the Holy Spirit. And so we just pray for wisdom and discernment each day, praying that he speaks through his child. Speaking of children, what was the best Mother's Day experience you had as a child, if you remember?
I don't really and maybe this is by design, but I mean, I don't really remember growing up like having an awesome Mother's Day experience. I think it ties back into on Mother's Day, maybe a mom just wants to have some peace and quiet for the day. I know we would, like I said, we would go out for a nice lunch or a nice dinner or something like that. Obviously go see the grandparents on each side, celebrate, my grandma and my Mimi. But yeah, nothing really crazy sticks out to me. But I think, like I said, that's probably by design of like, hey, maybe get some peace and quiet for Mother's Day.
Yeah, that makes sense. I remember a fond memory. I believe we all went to the beach one day for Mother's Day with a couple of other families. And that was just it was a blast. It was a blast. My mother loves the beach. And her son, myself, also loves the beach. Yet, that was an acquired taste. I think maybe if you asked me 10 years ago, do you love the beach? I would be like, I'm not stepping foot on there because all I did was get stung by jellyfish every single time, without fail. But the toxins in my body that attracted the jellyfish must have been released from me. And so I praise God. I don't know if somebody prayed over my body. It was just like, jellyfish, you will not sting this man in the name of Jesus. And let me be clear, listeners, I believe that could work. I do. I believe when you throw and believe Jesus' name into things, but you can't just say it sarcastically, right? That would be sacrilegious. But if you actually believe Jesus can deliver you from a jellyfish sting, I'm on that camp. I'm on that team. I don't know if I could pray that personally.
It would be hard not to say it either sarcastically or in a very, very funny way. If someone, can you imagine if you're in a life group and someone legitimately asked
I need to be delivered from the tentacles of the jellyfish.
Right. Like lay hands.
Right. But I would receive the prayer 100%. I would receive, because it's not fun to be stung by a jellyfish. I'm just going to be honest with you. And then you start to get into sand in your nooks and crannies, and it's just all downhill from there. So I'm starting to call on people to come pee on me because it hurts so bad. What I'm curious about, the NFL draft happened recently, and the Packers did something they haven't done in 20 plus years. Do you know what that is?
Was it hosting the draft?
No. Though that could be true, I'm not sure.
Picking a wide receiver in the first round? Is that what it is?
Yes. And that wide receiver is Matthew Golden, coming from the University of Texas. Let me tell you, I love Matthew Golden, so you've got a good one. I'm excited to watch him. He has sure hands, as they call it. Sure hands. You got a new truck. Tell us about that if you want to. Your truck saga.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it's been a little bit, but I think the last update I gave was my old truck. It got wrecked, and they totaled it, and they took it away from me. And yeah, I got a new truck, got a new F-150, not new to me. It's got like 45,000 miles on it. So, should last me, 12, 15 years, something like that. But yeah, it's great. It's got all the, it's got like the giant iPad display. It's pretty extreme whenever you switch over from a 2011 to a 2023. And it's got the Apple CarPlay and all this other stuff. Something funny about moms, my parents came to get my Papa Rollo's truck last Sunday because that's what I was driving while I was in between vehicles. And I picked him up from the airport, and my mom's car has this cool little deal where you can skip the song, or you can turn the volume up or down using hand gestures. And so she's always, she talks with her hands. So she's listening to the radio and talking to somebody in the car. She's, unbeknownst to her, she's turned the volume all the way up. She's changing it to yacht rock and skipping songs and all this other stuff. But I fooled her when I picked her up in the new truck, and she's like, "Oh, this is nice, spacious, nice and clean inside." I'm like, "Yeah, it's a pretty nice truck." And I said, "Check this out." And there's a volume button on the left side of the steering wheel, and so I was driving with that, and I did my hand like her car does the increased volume. I said, "Check this out." And I did it. And then with my left hand, I was turning up the volume or turning it down. She's like, "You got gesture control. This is crazy." She's like, "Your dad's probably got this in his truck and he has no clue." And she's going on and on and on. And then I told her, and she thought it was funny, but she's kind of gullible. So that was a fun little trick. That was one that my Pawpaw Dykes pulled on us. I think he had an old truck that had, I think it was one of the first models that had the, it was either volume change on the steering wheel or maybe channel change or something like that. And he convinced us for like a solid month that it was voice controlled. And so we would just ride around with him going, "Volume up." And he would like turn it up a couple of notches, "Volume down," and then turn it down.
That's hilarious.
Good sport. But no, yeah, the truck's, it drives great. It looks good. Very, very fortunate to have it. So
good. That reminded me, there was one moment, the button that in cars with the tire, I think it has to do with traction. You press it. It helps with traction, but the button shows like tires and then lines that are going like that.
Traction control, they call it.
All right. So I was asking my mom, and maybe it was one night after Wednesday night on the way back from church, whenever I was in grade school. I said, "What does that do?" And she said, "I don't know, press it. I think it makes the car go like the lines are going." The car started to swerve. So I pressed it, and the car started to swerve. And she was just swerving the car every time I pressed it. And so for a long time, I was like, "I'm never touching that button."
I'm terrified of it.
I still don't know what exactly it does, but you were speaking of pranks, and I thought that was a good one.
That is pretty good. Oh, man. Well, we need to, I was just thinking about this. We need to get out and golf. I know we were talking about this earlier, but perhaps we can shoot a little Patreon video the next time we golf. That would just be so incredible.
Yeah, and if our listeners, you want to fund a course, our time on the course, we'll give you special shout outs, that kind of stuff. And speaking of special shout outs, I just want to shout out Jimmy, James, the King, Gary for winning the official, quite frankly, March Madness tournament bracket. You've done by far and away, you were in the top 98 percentile. Well, let me be clear. That was top 98 percentile is easy to accomplish. But what you were was in the top 1.8% of the world as far as brackets go. I believe you were 98.2. And that is quite a feat. We praise God for your participation. And again, that is James the King, Jimmy, Gary, who has won that. And there's a lot to be proud of there, because there was a lot. We had about 150 contestants. And so it's not easy to beat 150 other people, but you beat 150 million people. So great work out there, my friend. Thanks for participating. As you all remember, you have not because you ask not. I'm throwing it out there, Brett. I was in the gym not yesterday, but the other month, and I was on the treadmill. Well, my hair's getting long, so sometimes when I'm running on the treadmill, I have to put my hands through my hair to keep it out of my noggin, or keep it over my ears, behind my ears. Well, sometimes I also wear a hat. So, naturally, I do the hand and the hair, but I got to get it under the hats. But I have my earphones in, so my hand hits my earphones fall out, and one of them breaks because it fell onto a treadmill. It got it got spun off the treadmill, and then I stepped on it.
That's what I was waiting for.
And it just hasn't been the same since. So I've been a 1 year guy, and if anyone has any brand deals with AirPods, or it doesn't necessarily have to be AirPods, but I do appreciate the lack of wires about them. But just let us know. And if anyone out there is trying to make their brand known, we've got Williams Green and Clean Lawn Care for you in Kingsland, Georgia area. That's one of our sponsors. We want to give them a special shout out. But we just want to celebrate what's going on. So I just thought I'd bring that up. Just so make your requests known, you know. You have any requests like that?
Yeah, I've got requests. I'd love to go on like a free vacation. So I don't know if there's any like companies out there that do that.
You have not because you asked not. Now is the time.
Now is the
Just
time.
include me.
Of course, you'll be joining us. What I'd really like is a week in Cancun, a nice romantic all-inclusive resort. A room for two would be great, and we'll bring you along. And by we, I mean myself. The two would be me and you. Somebody's got to watch the kids. So, after Mother's Day, Molly will kind of get back in the swing of things with taking care of all the kids by herself and all that good stuff.
There'll be a lot of Patreon videos in Cancun.
right. Jeez. But yeah, no, I'd love that. I mean, airfare, transfer, the hotel, the whole shebang would really be great. And I've got a buddy, my buddy Todd, just won 2 vacations. Did I tell you about this?
No.
So we were golfing in that charity scramble last week.
Mm-hmm.
It's all it was me, Todd, Andy, and a fellow that's in our Sunday school class, Austin McLeod. I believe he's a faithful listener of the pod. He's always asking me about it and stuff like that. But just a great group of guys. Little alliteration there. But with the scramble, it's so good because Todd hits his 4 hybrid off the tee box. He never pulls driver. So we're always a solid 230 in the middle of the fairway. So that really lets me just loosen up my swing as hard as I can, slice it into the woods. Every once in a while it goes straight and it's an absolute bomb, but not very often. The irons, I was hitting my irons pretty well, but there's different challenge holes. So a couple of the par 3s is like a hole in one. If you get a hole in one, you get XYZ. There's a long drive competition, but there was one hole that the green was really long. It was skinny but long. And they had a long putt contest, and it's probably a 50-foot putt. And so we all kind of bought the player pack so we could, do the competition holes. And we all stood in a circle and we spun the tee. Whoever it landed on went first, so on and so forth. Of course, I get the first draw. So I have no clue what the line is. It's a big sweeping left to right, up over a ridge and then back down a ridge. It's a difficult long putt. I go first. I hit it. I make it to the top of the ridge. I thought it was going to trickle down nicely, but just didn't give it enough mustard. Didn't give it as many beans as I had really wanted to. Andy steps up, hits a very similar shot to me. Austin steps up, gets it closer to the pin, but still doesn't make it. Lastly, Todd steps up, and if he doesn't just absolutely drain this putt from 50 feet out. We're all going crazy on the green, you know, etiquette goes out the window completely. And so Todd's like, you know, making sure the guy takes his info down. He's like, what do I win? And the guy's got like a booklet and he's like, you got 2 free vacations. And it's like, total is valued at like $12,000 worth of vacations.
Holy cow.
One of them was like one to either Miami or Mexico for 5 nights. And then he got another vacation that's abroad, either like France or Italy, that's like 8 or 9 nights. And all you have to do is pay for your flights. Like they cover food and hotel and everything else. Absolutely crazy. I was a little upset because he hadn't sunk a putt all day for the team. You know what I mean? But when it comes time to win something for himself, he just steps up and drains it.
It sounds like you should be receiving one of those vacations due to you giving him the line.
Well, look, that's what we were all saying. Like, one of these is going to have to be a boys' trip with all of us because we all kind of gave you the line and the speed and everything else.
Yeah, how many does the vacation cover?
I think it's just for 2, but I mean, we can
asking you.
Yeah.
You have not because you asked not.
Exactly.
You know?
So that was a little, I mean, great for him. He was very excited. We were all a little, I don't think jealous is the word, but we were like, come on, dude, you went last. We couldn't have gone last, you know? Real servant leader over here going last. But other than that, I felt like I had a decent day on the course. I got a new putter. I got the White Hot Versa, which is a little bit more of a mallet than what I was using previously. It's got a nice thick grip on it. And I've been using the claw grip recently, which if you watch Scotty putt, that's his method. So yeah, I drained some putts with the claw grip and with the new putter, and it feels good. Just having a whole new setup, you know?
Yeah, and on our Patreon, we'll do a little tour of your bag as well. I think it'd be good for our listeners to see what is in your bag, but see specifically the White Hot putter. And I've long wanted one, and you were a little coveting of the trips. I covet your mallet a little bit, your White Hot mallet. And so we've got some special visitors. If our listeners, if you can't tell, we have Stetson and Molly on the call. Stetson, do you have anything to share?
Can you say hello to Bo? You say hello, Bo.
Hello.
It's not an earphone. You're talking to it.
Hello.
Hello, Bo. Say hello, Bo. Oh, it's like he's holding it up like a phone.
Hello.
Hello, Bo. Hello, Stetson. I know you can't hear me because you're in Daddy's earphones, but
I don't know if we're gonna sit down right now.
you are making great content right now.
We go back upstairs, all right?
All right, we've got about a couple minutes left.
My friends and listeners, that is the beauty of fatherhood. We've had our special guest, Stetson, on today, and he delivered a great message.
Yep, held the microphone like a telephone. The actual microphone piece was up to his ear for all of the listeners. And he said, hello, Bo. Hello, Bo. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
And then you hang it up like a phone, so...
Well, you're going to the park today. Maybe what is one thing, you have anything else that you'd like to share with our listeners before we start the Mother's Day festivities?
No, I don't think so. Obviously, a huge shout out to all the mothers out there. I'm excited for Father's Day. That's all I can say, you know. Maybe there's a little golf trip for the boys in there. But no, yeah, I think that's about it. Next week we'll have to get into the Disney trip. We could spend an entire podcast on the Disney trip. Was such a fun time. But yeah, unfortunately I don't think we've got the coverage to go through it all right now.
No, we wouldn't do it justice. But we do want to say thank you to moms. You provide life, you give life, you provide nourishment for your children. Um, and specifically our mothers. This podcast wouldn't exist without our mothers. I'm just going to be honest with you. The way we were raised by our parents has led us to where we are right now recording this podcast. And that's why we have a strong desire to see you week after week. It's because we love you deeply and generously. And that's why we're going to see you in 7 days.